Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. There we go. That was the audience participation part. I'm very happy to welcome you all to the home of your public media company, WHYY, and I have the high honor of serving as WHYY CEO. So thank you all for being here this evening. I'm Bill Marazzo. I want to give a shout out to our partners here this evening, the Philadelphia Bar Association, and of course, the Committee of 70. So, as we're gathering here this evening, I am reminded of the vital role that a district attorney plays in shaping the community that we're lucky enough to call home here in Philadelphia. An effort to make sure that we all feel safe, we all feel connected, and we all feel that we have voices that can be heard. So we do take great pride here at WHYY to our commitment to delivering accurate, balanced information, creating spaces for meaningful dialogue. And tonight's conversation, frankly, is an important reflection of that mission, a chance to engage, ask questions, and better understand what's at stake in this very important election. So, we are in a moment where division can often dominate the headlines. Our commitment here, however, at HYY is to amplify community voices. And closing information gaps, it seems to us, is more important than ever. So we believe in the power of shared humanity and in the kind of journalism that builds trust between us and you all with one another and fosters connection. I am sorry to say WHYY and its partners this evening have worked very hard to ensure this event is fair, nonpartisan, and focused entirely on public service. Both candidates for the district attorney's office were offered an equal opportunity to share their vision for Philadelphia's future. And one of them, Judge Dugan, has chosen not to participate this evening, in which case we feel this opportunity has been somewhat suboptimized. Yet, I think we all can appreciate the fact that we will learn at least one candidate's view of the opportunity and learn a lot more, probably about the nuances of this important office here in our city. Again, I want to thank our partners here, the Bar Association, the Committee of 70, Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, the Forum of Executive Women, the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia, and each of you for helping to make this evening possible. As you know, WHYY lives for and lives only because of the opportunity for each of a couple of million people every week who rely on our services to become members of HYY. So for those of you who are already members, you have our profound thanks. So I have the pleasure and the honor of introducing you all to Kathy Jaffery. She is the Chancellor, right, of the Philadelphia Bar Association. Ladies and gentlemen, Kathy Jaffery.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the District Attorney Candidates Forum. As mentioned, my name is Kathy Jaffery, and I actually have the privilege of being the Chancellor of the Philadelphia Bar Association. We are the country Metropolitan Bar Association, and for over 222 years, since 1802, we have been serving the legal profession and the public by promoting justice, professional excellence, and respect for the rule of law. Central to that mission is helping the public gain greater understanding of the legal and justice system, which is why we are proud to co-host this event with the Committee of 70, WHYY, and the civic partners, as mentioned by Bill, Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, the League of Women Voters, and the Forum of Executive Women. Thank you to the moderators, and thank you to DA Krasner and everyone in the audience, both in person and virtually, for joining us for this evening's forum. The district attorney is one of the most consequential positions in our city. The Philadelphia DA's office is the largest prosecutor's office in Pennsylvania and the third largest in the nation. The DA's office is integral in maintaining the safety and the well-being of individual Philadelphians and their neighborhoods. And as a proud Center City resident, I am proud to be here with you tonight. Please vote in the May 20th primary to make sure your voice is heard. And I will also want to remind you that this is a judicial election year. So we encourage you, the voters, to look at our Judicial Commission's ratings of the Philadelphia judicial candidates at electqualifiedjudges.com. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight and speak with you tonight. And now I will turn it over to Sherry Gray.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to WHYY. I'm Cherry Gregg, co-host of Studio 2 on WHYY 90.9 FM, and to my left is WHYY News political reporter Carmen Russell Sluchansky. Tonight's forum is part of a civic partnership between WHYY News, the Committee of 70, and the Philadelphia Bar Association, with support from Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia, the Forum of Executive Women, and other civic partners. The district attorney is one of the most powerful roles in local government, shaping how our cities respond to crime, how justice is pursued, and how trust is built between communities and the courts. This forum was originally planned as a conversation between both Democratic candidates for district attorney, incumbent Larry Krasner, and former municipal court judge Patrick Dugan. Both campaigns were invited, and both campaigns initially confirmed their participation. But on April 10th, Judge Dugan's campaign informed the organizers that
positions, as well as the criticisms he's faced during his last two terms, with a focus on the issues that matter to Philadelphia residents. The questions were derived from contributions from our partner organizations that Cherry mentioned, who put together this forum. There will be no questions from the audience. So let's get started.
All right, DA Krasner, we welcome you to the podium.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for being here. And let me just set up the ground rules. Even though this forum features you, DA Krasner, as the sole candidate at the podium, we still want to put some structure into this discussion. We will begin with an opening statement, then we'll move into a series of questions and 10 core areas, and a brief lightning round followed by a few more questions as we wrap up with a closing statement. So we'll start now with the opening statement, and we ask you, DA Krasner, to take 3 minutes to tell voters why they should choose you for a third term.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I do want to start out by saying I love the fact that we are at WHYY. I love the fact that this is sponsored by the Bar Association. As you know, there are people now trying to take away both from us. There are people who do not appreciate the rule of law, or organizations for the purpose of preservation of the rule of law. There are people who think that we don't need objective information, that we don't need facts. I don't agree with those people. It was not a mistake that I chose to have my announcement be at public access cable, and for the second time. It's not a mistake that we selected this forum for the purpose of what I thought was going to be a debate. It is very important that we support these institutions. They are absolutely vital to our democracy, so I'm delighted to be here. Now, having said that, a lot of what I have to say will be coming through these answers. But fundamentally, I believe what this election is about is essentially the same thing that our times are about, which is that there are those of us who believe in equality. That is the fundamental bedrock notion of the United States of America and of democracy. But it is the antithesis of what people who would tear down our institutions believe. When you hear all this stuff about eliminating DEI, about I won't get on a plane with a certain kind of pilot, when you hear people who obviously have very little capacity to do anything talking about merit, and somehow merit only applies to people who look like them, then you know where you are. You are in a moment in this country when there are people who are trying to destroy the bedrock. They're trying to destroy our connection to equality. and we are here to support it. What does that mean? That means if people are rich and powerful and they break the law, they're going to be accountable. That's what it means. That means that we move forward fearlessly, understanding that we are going to win in the long run, because the fever is going to break, and when the fever breaks, everybody's going to look around to see who was where, and like many of you, I hope to be on the right side of history. I'm certainly trying to be on the right side of history. But for those who feel the other way, for those who have some odd attachment to South Africa, for those who are of the opinion that equality is a, quote, degenerate, unquote, notion, which a former German leader used to say, for those people, let me be clear, I am here to stop you. I am here to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which is my fundamental oath. I am here to seek justice, which equates to equality in many different ways. And if you want to mess with that, then you can F around and find out.
All right, thank you, DA Krasner. Now we'll move to our question and answer portion. We ask that you take 2 minutes to answer the main questions, and we'll give you a minute to respond to any follow-up questions. Carmen, you have the floor.
Thank you. So we want to start with a very local issue, which is that about Kensington, a neighborhood that has long faced overlapping challenges, including poverty, addiction, housing, insecurity, and gun violence. It's also a community of families, small businesses, and longtime residents who want safety, dignity, and meaningful investment like everywhere else. D.A. Krasner, through your tenure, you've emphasized a public health approach to addiction, deprioritizing prosecution of certain low-level drug offenses. Supporters say this has reduced unnecessary incarceration, which I believe was one of your goals, but critics, including some city leaders, argue that it has actually made it harder to solve some of the problems in that area. Is it not possible that the DA's office could have better served Kensington, working with police and the city to make it safer?
So Kensington has been near and dear to me for a very long time for a couple of reasons. One of them being I have pretty good facility in Spanish, and so as a lawyer coming out of law school in 1987, public defender first and then civil rights and criminal defense lawyer, I had a lot of Spanish-speaking clients. Many of them resided in Kensington. And there is a second reason, which is I spent a good part of my career representing activists and activist organizations who were seeking nonviolent social change. And one of the great challenges that we faced, and I see some of the people associated with it in the audience here actually, was HIV, and it was AIDS. This is in the late 80s, it's in the early 90s. I became their lawyer for multiple purposes. And one of those purposes was to help stop the spread of the disease. So that involved things like clean needles, like trying to make sure that a couple of kids at the prom are not getting HIV because other people used drugs or had sex in ways that unfortunately transmitted the disease, and unwittingly, somehow they're passing it from one to another. It is unacceptable to me, and always has been, to treat a virus as if it's not there and to let it spread to any number of people. It's just unacceptable. So these issues are near and dear to my heart. They always have been. The reality, and I say this with respect for our critics, is that they have 60 years of failure to point to. That's the truth. Hang them high, lock them up, give them long sentences has not cured addiction. It has not cleaned up the streets of Kensington. It has not made life better for people suffering from addiction or from their neighbors. They are all entitled to energy, proactive effort, but it should be evidence-based and scientifically informed. There's a lot of people here who are in that process. I am as well. We want it to work. It hasn't worked for 50-plus years, and I am here to tell you that anything that I can do to bring a combined public health and public safety approach to it, that's what I would like to do.
All right, so for a quick follow-up, and once again, 1 minute for follow-up answers. Going into a third term, if you are reelected, what will you do? You mentioned you will do anything that you can do. So what will you do working with the city in order to help alleviate the problems that Kensington is suffering? Be as specific as you can, please.
Sure, we will help to bring the best practices to Philadelphia. The reality is there are some very successful programs around the world and in other states. Just one of them that I could mention was designed by a medical doctor, and it resulted in an 80% reduction in the 5,000, at that time, heroin-addicted people who were living on the street. That would be quite an accomplishment to reduce the on-street, unhoused, addicted population by 80%. That science is there. That information is there. I have visited that program. I have walked the streets with their outreach workers. It works. We need to go in the direction of things that have proved that they work, because we need not to be able to say, well, I tried. We need to be able to say we tried and it worked. There are lives to save out there. As we are here today, we are losing about 1 person to homicide every 2 days. We're losing 6 to 8 people to fatal drug overdoses every 2 days. We have to care about that deeply, and I do.
Before we go to round 2, I just want to ask you a quick follow-up, specifically around wellness court. That was a program under the Parker administration. Your thoughts on that quickly, and then also, it hasn't proven to be very effective. How would you change it to make it better?
Wellness court is, in my opinion, a work in progress. It is in some ways similar to some programs that have worked very well, and it has evolved. I don't know if you've all been watching carefully, but some of the rhetoric and some of the description of what it would be has really evolved over a period of time, and it has evolved in a more positive direction, in my opinion, based upon, approaches that have actually worked. So I've made it very clear over and over that I and my office are here to work with the Parker administration. I like this mayor. I like her personally. I think that she is trying really hard to do good things in this city, but we need to be included, and so does the judiciary, so does the public defender's office, and so does the medical profession, people who have deep expertise in what it means to have a level 1 bed versus a level 4 bed. These details make all the difference. There's nothing I would rather see than it succeed, and I hope to be a part of making that happen.
All right, we're going to move on now to the issue of retail theft and public perception. Retail theft is a significant issue in Philadelphia. We've seen major financial losses, some major store closures like Macy's, plus the locking up of merchandise at numerous retailers like CVS. We've also seen increasingly sophisticated theft operations, including organized rings that reportedly use teenagers and even children to steal merchandise. DA Krasner, you have faced serious criticism for your past policies around retail theft, which charge all retail theft as a summary offense unless the value of stolen items exceeded $500 or the person was a habitual offender. You revised that policy last year. So first of all, was the revision an admission that the policy was not working during a period in which property theft spiked and has since remained pretty high?
So thank you for the question. The fact is retail theft is down. If you check your Philadelphia Police Department data today, you will see that. It's down almost 8%. In fact, 15 out of 18 categories of crime are down in Philadelphia. And at the moment, we are enjoying the lowest number of homicides on the 22nd day of April in over 50 years, right? In fact, it is down. It's very important we stick with facts when we have these important discussions. It is true that one of our big challenges in Philadelphia and throughout the country is retail theft, and it has been for quite a number of reasons. It does have to do with addiction. The opioid addiction remains out of control. It has to do with having more homeless people last year than in any year in U.S. history. It has to do with retail moving in different directions and an awful lot of retail occurring online. It has to do with the fact that the most effective fence, in other words, receiver of stolen goods in history, is the internet, and it has created a marketplace for these kinds of sales. These are real challenges, and like everything else that I have seen in almost 40 years in criminal justice, you're going to see changes. When you can steal a car with a screwdriver, it's going to be different than when you have smart keys, and that's going to result in another problem, which is carjacking. These are things that occur, and we have to address them. I am not here to say that all our policies are perfect or we make all the right decisions, but I am here to say that the values behind our policies remain identical, that they have evolved in ways that basically boil down to similar notions. 80% of the people who get busted for retail theft do not have a prior record. They do not, or they have an absolutely minimal record. They deserve the kind of mercy that we have been dispensing. There's another 10% who are truly prolific, and they are treated very differently. They're charged at the highest levels that are permitted, and then we try to figure out the underlying problems that take it from there. And when it comes to organized retail theft, as far as I'm concerned, professional criminals, they're just not going to get mercy. That's not what it's about. If they want to make money off of victimizing other people, then they're going to have to pay for it in the usual way. Our retail theft task force, which is now about a year and a half old, has worked very closely with police and with merchants, including using new types of technology that have been very effective. There is an app out there that has made a big difference. And we are seeing at this point that out of the 10, I heard this from police the other day, out of the 10 most prolific offenders in Philadelphia, 8 were in custody, 2 were on the radar and likely to be brought into custody soon. We have to keep working on these things, but we also cannot fall into the trap of saying that if a major American pharmacy goes bankrupt, in large part because they bought a whole bunch of stores they didn't need, and then got sued over their dispensing opioids in irresponsible ways, that somehow is the fault of some unhoused person. It's a whole lot more complicated than that.
And so I do want to follow up quickly, because according to an analysis from the Philadelphia Police Department, 57% of all retail theft arrests in 2024 were downgraded by your office. Now, that marked an improvement from 2019, but still higher than 2014. And your opponent, former Judge Patrick Dugan, has said he was inspired to run because of the city's high crime rate. You've addressed that. He also specifically accused you of being soft on crime. He pointed to your past approach to retail theft as one example. I want you to talk a little bit about your retail theft policy 2.0, and I want you to get specific. Does it go far enough to address what many small business owners and residents still see as a persistent problem?
Our 2.0 policy, in my opinion, is excellent. It goes very vigorously after organized retail theft. It goes very vigorously after prolific retail thieves, while simultaneously recognizing if you just put them in jail for a year or 2 years, but you don't deal with the underlying deep mental health issues, you don't deal with the underlying addiction, you don't deal with the underlying poverty, they will do those couple years and come out and do it again. And as for the 80% who turn out to have no record at all and basically be young people who are opportunistically stealing something because they're risk-taking and they're young, that's the truth. They deserve mercy. That mercy, however, comes in the form of accountability. There are things that they have to do. It's often a lot more than what you have to do if you're sentenced in order to get that level of mercy.
But what do you say to the business owners who have, they're losing product? They're dealing with this.
I talk to business owners all the time. Sometimes I sit in their stores with them for 2 hours and we talk through things. These issues are quite complex. They involve the level of arrest that is occurring. It involves whether or not the store cares to pay for its own security or passes that on to the taxpayer. It involves whether or not those stores actually stop people who are leaving, as I saw them do for more than 30 years of my almost 40-year career. That seems not to be what they do. It seems that we frequently have videos of people leaving the store with stuff, and the videos coming from the position where you would expect a security guard to be. These issues are complex. They are multi-layered. And I understand it's in an election cycle, the blame game is fun, perhaps, for my opponent, although he's not here apparently. But I understand the blame game is fun, but we got to be honest about this. We got to talk about what the facts really are, as opposed to the cartoon that some people find useful in a campaign.
All right, so moving on to the DAO's relationship with police. It is an essential relationship. During your term, it's also been a bit, shall we say, delicate. Mr. Krasner, you've made prosecuting police misconduct and holding law enforcement accountable a priority of your administration. Some within the PPD and even within the City Hall argue that your approach has weakened trust of the DA's office, made collaboration more difficult, and made it harder for the PPD to recruit and retain officers. If reelected, what would you do to repair that relationship with law enforcement, and how would you define what a productive, accountable relationship with the PPD should look like in a third term?
So here's the core of the issue. Number one, I get along extremely well with the current commissioner. He and I talk frequently, text frequently, meet frequently. I think he's an extremely capable guy whose career, even before he became the commissioner, showed that he was dedicated to innovation. This is someone who was instrumental in reducing the number of juveniles coming out of school fights, and I'm talking minor school fights, the stuff that would have put me in my public school in the principal's office and never would have put me in a courtroom. He was instrumental in making sure that city kids were not treated so differently than suburban kids when it came to just sort of basic stuff in the schools, right? You're dealing with someone who believes in innovation. He and I get along great. That's how I see it, and I got along fine with the other two. But of the three, the one I know the best, the one with whom I've worked the most, is Bethel. Now, we also have now a breath of fresh air in the leadership of the Fraternal Order of Police. For those of you who don't know, the head of the Fraternal Order of Police now is a man named Roosevelt Poplar, who in many, many different ways has shown me that he is about helping his members, protecting his members, but for that very small portion who are actually criminals, he is not about having their back. That's great. That's what we need. He has called me at one point and said, I'd like you to change the name of a particular database you keep because I think it's, it suggests unfairly that police officers on that list may have done something wrong. He was right. We talked about it. We agreed upon it. I changed it. That's the kind of relationship I have with Roosevelt Poplar. It's not the relationship I had with John McNesby. You may recall, Mr. McNesby shared the following wisdom with us in 2017. He referred to Black Lives Matter members, at least a few of whom I see here, as a, quote, pack of rabid animals, unquote. He is also the man who defended a police officer who had a Nazi tattoo on his arm and was wearing it visibly while in uniform so the whole world could see. That's the kind of thing he defended when he wasn't letting the Proud Boys into the bar at FOP Hall when Mike Pence came to town. I'm not getting along with that. I am not getting along with that. My dad served in World War II. I know what that is. I'm not getting along with that. And I frankly am proud to say I'm not getting along with that. I would also point out that when John was around, the level of police officers not showing up for work and being listed as injured on duty by the doctors John McNesby selected was at a record high when we most needed them on the street. And under Roosevelt Poplar, what we are seeing is that those numbers are way, way down, and we're almost at normal levels of people being there. So I don't accept the narrative that I'm not getting along with the police when I get along so well, both with the commissioner and with the head of the FOP, when I've been endorsed twice by the Black Officers Association in prior elections, who felt that having a civil rights lawyer, former civil rights lawyer as district attorney was good for them.
Thank you. Thank you. We went a bit over time, and we do have a short amount of time here, so I'll pass back over to Cherry.
But I have so much to say.
Close it. You get a closing later.
Yes. And if you're just joining us online, this is WHYY's Democratic primary debate for Philadelphia District Attorney, or should I say forum for District Attorney. I'm Cherry Gregg, co-host of Studio 2 alongside WHYY political reporter Carmen Russell-Sluchansky. And this forum was originally planned as a conversation between both Democratic candidates for District Attorney, incumbent Larry Krasner and former Municipal Court Judge Patrick Dugan. Both campaigns were invited and both candidates initially confirmed their participation. But on April 10th, Judge Dugan's campaign informed the organizers that he would no longer be attending, and the campaign reiterated the decision in a press release sent earlier today. WHYY and its partners decided to move forward, so tonight's forum features incumbent Larry Krasner as the sole candidate for a district attorney taking questions. And so I want to move on to the issue of juvenile justice and charging decisions. Few decisions made by the district attorney carry more long-term consequences than how young people are charged when accused of serious crimes. The DA has significant discretion in deciding whether a minor is prosecuted as a child or as an adult, a decision that can shape the entire trajectory of that young person's life. And so my question for you, Mr. Krasner, is a two-parter. First, what is your policy about the charging and incarceration of children as adults? And additionally, every district attorney's office, including yours, has used their discretion to require plea agreements from children as a condition of returning to juvenile court. Do you intend to continue this practice?
All right, thank you for the question. So the big picture with juvenile justice is, number one, we are blessed with having a first assistant in the office who was Barack Obama's chief of juvenile justice in his second term. That's Robert Listenby, very, very long, storied, important career in the field, and he has been able to guide us in very positive ways. When we came into office, there were, at that time, about 680 juveniles in jail-like settings. That has been reduced as of now by about 70%. That's, to put it mildly, a significant reduction, consistent with the criminology that says Addressing the needs of kids closer to home is more effective. We have also, during that time period, tried as much as we think is appropriate, and often it is appropriate, to resolve more cases in juvenile court. We don't always have a choice. The fact is all homicides by law have to start out in adult court. There's a whole list of offenses that under the direct file juvenile statute must begin in adult court. We have no choice. And if they are to go back to juvenile court, it will be because a judge says so, not because we say so. So we frequently advocate for cases to go back to juvenile court, and we may find ourselves with a judge who agrees or a judge who disagrees with us, and then we have to try to figure it out. I will say this, because you have pointed to it. In general, I do not like requiring a young person who's in adult court to agree to plead to go back to juvenile court. That is something that has happened more than I find appropriate. Our policy has been modified to make sure that people within the office know that that is not our preference. But there are occasions when a judge will say to us, I'm not sending it back unless you are going to have a plea in this case, because for whatever reason, let me not speculate on the reasons, but we sometimes face that type of situation. I do think it's a fair criticism of our office that there have been occasions when there was not enough compliance with the policy. It's something we've actually been working on for a number of months. We've modified our policies to make it clear, because I never want to be in a situation where we have a young person who pleads guilty in juvenile court to something they didn't do. Yeah. Just to get back there. I always want them to have the opportunity to have their day in court where that's possible. And I think it is fair to say that there was some slippage there, but we have corrected it at this time.
Yeah, and I have a follow-up question, because I want to talk more broadly about your approach to prosecuting juveniles accused of less serious versus more serious crimes. And specifically, I want to get at where the line is for you. Who should be diverted versus who should get time incarcerated, and give a specific example if you could, just so we understand where the line is for you.
Sure, although that's a tough question for a reason I'll explain, but here's the reality. We have drastically expanded diversion within juvenile court. It is much more robust than it used to be, so we have more opportunities than we used to have, and we even took the same approach and applied it to young adults. So we have a program that never existed before. It is called the Emerging Adult Unit that looks at people between ages 18 and 25, because the psychological information is that they are in some ways like juveniles. They're still evolving psychologically. We take very seriously the idea that you can rehabilitate people who are younger, better, and that they're less capable of consequential thinking, therefore they make dumber decisions. We take that very seriously in what we try to do. So where's the line? We see a whole lot of cases in juvenile court where you have someone with not much of a prior record who looks like they can do pretty well. They're facing challenges at home, they're facing challenges in school. They tend to be consent decrees, which is a form of diversion, or they tend to go in the direction of diversion. When you're talking about serious violent felonies, that is a very different situation. There will be far fewer of those cases that are actually worthy of some sort of diversion. They're generally going to be prosecuted. But let's remember that the whole purpose of the juvenile system is quite different than the purpose of the adult system. The whole purpose is to rehabilitate. That's in the law. That's not our opinion. That's what it says, and that's what it should say, because that's how you actually solve these problems, so that young people who are doing the wrong thing don't keep doing the wrong thing, so that young people don't end up with no treatment, no education, sitting in an adult jail where they get a different kind of education, which is crime school. And they get it from adults who then become their mentors and their role models. It would be nice if I could simply draw a line for you, but the fact is it's extremely specific to each case, and we believe very much in individual justice. And so the existence or non-existence of addiction means something. The existence or non-existence of deep trauma earlier that was not addressed means something. Any prior contacts means something. Testing of capacity, including things like intelligence and whether or not there are other deficits, all of this means something. And we have to take it all together and figure out in the individual case what makes sense.
Let's talk about diversion programs for a little bit. they've become an increasingly important tool in the criminal justice system, offering alternatives to traditional prosecution for certain offenses, particularly for individuals with no prior record. Supporters argue, as I believe you have, that diversion can reduce recidivism, ease pressure on the courts, and lead to better long-term outcomes. But these programs also raise critical questions: who should be eligible, and where should we draw the line as far as who is eligible and who gets to access them? What is your position on how diversion programs should be used generally? And I'd actually like you to get a little more specific. Should first-time offenders arrested for illegal gun possession be eligible for diversion programs? If so, what would that program look like in your third term?
So thank you for the question. The short answer is some of them should, and I say that because we've done it. My office, for a couple of years, started a program and followed it that we referred to as AFD. It was essentially a diversionary program for people who possessed guns but did not appear to be criminals. They did not appear to be people who were using them in questionable ways. And we were extremely careful in what we did in terms of their prior record, and in terms of other things. Every single person we considered was submitted to an intelligence check to see if they seemed to be affiliated with any shooting group. The circumstances of the arrest were evaluated to see whether anything seemed to be suggestive of criminal activity. We wanted to know where the gun came from, and we applied pretty strict criteria based in part on my nearly 40 years in the game. And this is what we got. We got that this group of people who were put into this diversionary program were much less likely to ever be arrested again than an equivalent group of people who were convicted. The ratio was 1 to 4. The people convicted had 4 new arrests. The people who went through this very intensive, very difficult diversionary program had 1. Now, I do not want to see more arrests. I do not want to see more crime. But I also don't think that the system should be a cult of punishment. It seems to me, if you can make society safer by making people accountable and making them do a lot of work after they illegally possess a gun, then that's what you ought to do. Because ultimately, it's not primarily about the person possessing the gun. It's about making society safer. And I have to tell you, and I'm not suggesting this about you, but it always amazes me when I hear people who are offered this information and say it's bad to do it. Why is it bad to do it? Did you want more arrests? Did you want more criminal behavior? When you convict people, it should be worth it. And that means you should not take someone who's fundamentally law-abiding, but whose permit expired, or who didn't get around to getting the permit because they didn't know it. You should not take that person and disable them from the economy for the rest of their life by giving them a conviction when they are not criminal in nature. You will just turn them towards crime. You won't turn them away from crime. So, ultimately, if we looked at that data and it was upside down and we were seeing people who were diverted doing worse, then we should change it. And we have changed things when we found that kind of information. But I really don't have a problem defending making society safer by the intelligent use of diversionary programs that are very carefully done.
A follow-up on diversion programs. Your challenger, Judge Patrick Dugan, has said that he would put diversion programs, particularly some diversion programs, on steroids, his words, not mine. He actually accused you of effectively letting one diversion program, the Dawn Court, wither on the vine, is what the accusation was. Dawn Court was designed to help sex workers get treatment for addiction or mental health problems rather than incarcerate them when they're arrested. Do you not support that initiative? And if not, why not?
I do not support that initiative. Part of what we have done is to increase the opportunities for diversion, so you grow the tree, and part of what we have done is prune the tree. Let me tell you about the Dawn Court program. This Dawn Court program was for women only. That means it was a lawsuit waiting to happen, because that is discriminatory. There are sex workers who are not women, okay? That's number one. Number two, it was extremely unpopular with the public defender's office. During the year prior to our changing our policies around this, there were only 4 people who the public defender's office represented who went into the program. Why? Because it was a ton of work, and then people who did not jumped through all the hoops, sometimes ended up being sentenced to state time. Public defenders have a job, and it is to protect their clients. It is not actually necessarily to improve society, although they do a lot of that too, right? So their position was, look, if you just go and get convicted in municipal court by a judge, such as Judge Dugan, who's a misdemeanor judge, if you just get convicted, you're going to get probation and you'll be fine. But if you go into dawn court, they're going to have you in there day after day, and if you do the wrong thing, you might end up doing state time. And so it was ineffective in terms of getting sex workers to come into the program. It was literally a lawsuit waiting to happen. I'm surprised it never occurred, actually, and it needed to be changed. What sex workers need is they need to be understood as victims, because fundamentally, in my opinion, and I understand there may be some dispute, but fundamentally, in my opinion, that's what they are. Many of them have been victimized by pimps or have been sexually assaulted at other points in their life. Many of them are suffering from addiction, sometimes mental health issues that have not been addressed. We are not helping them by giving them a bunch of prostitution convictions, whether it says dawn court or not, and then telling them, now go get a job in a grocery store as a cashier, because they're not going to get it. That's not going to help them. There are 100 things we can do to support them, to help them, to assist them in getting out of the life if that's what they want to do. I could point you to dozens of people I know who at one point in their lives were sex workers and are doing amazing things now. But convicting them never did them any good.
Thank you. We're going to move on now to wrongful conviction and the Conviction Integrity Unit. Philadelphia has one of the highest rates of exonerations in the country, with dozens of wrongful convictions overturned in recent years. And DA Krasner, your Conviction Integrity Unit has overseen more than 30 exonerations, a huge win for criminal justice reform advocates. But critics, including some former prosecutors, say you've been too aggressive in revisiting old cases. Last month, a judge fined your office $120,000 for unfairly accusing 2 former prosecutors of misconduct. I want you to respond to your critics, but also explain, how do you balance justice for the wrongfully convicted with maintaining public trust in prior convictions as well as in your office?
Well, the good news is you said they're former prosecutors, because frankly, I don't need any prosecutors in my office who think it's funny or okay to keep someone in jail who didn't do it. And I don't need any prosecutors in my office who think the old practice of hiding everything that helped the defense so that you can make sure you win your trial was okay. That is illegal. It is unconstitutional. It is despicable. Frankly, it's more or less kidnapping. And if you think about the impact on someone like Curtis Crossland, who did 34 years in jail for a crime he didn't commit, when he had 5 kids at home and was living with their mom, was working and studying, if you think of the impact on him, that's practically a war crime. Seriously, think about that. He went to jail with an infant. He came home to someone who was almost 40 years of age. That's just deeply wrong. Every single exoneration that has occurred in Philadelphia was signed off on by a judge, every single one. They all looked at our work, they all determined it met the standard, they signed off. We don't have the power to do that ourselves. And out of all the exonerations, we're up to about 45 now. We've only been turned down twice, okay? So I understand there's some judges who used to be prosecutors in that office who got some feelings. Come to think of it, almost all the judges who got some feelings used to be prosecutors in our office. How did that happen? And none of them have a memo saying, eek shriek, we should stop doing this. We haven't found those memos. Look, it's what it is. When you try to change a culture, you become the county that was responsible for 10% of all exonerations last year, which we were. There were 150, we had 15, approximately. There's some people who are not going to like it because you're making change. That's just how it is. They are entitled to their opinion, and I intend to keep going full speed ahead.
And I want to press you on this, DA Krasner, because the accusations are pretty strong. The judge in that case, they said your office baselessly accused 2 former prosecutors of misconduct and then went on a campaign to keep one of them from accessing documents that would clear their name. I know you are insinuating here that that judge is biased, but there are people who have questions. And so I want to ask you, what is currently in place, or how would you improve the culture and internal accountability of your office to make sure that this type of thing or that these types of things are not actually happening?
So we are clear, I am not accusing that judge, whose name is Anne Marie Coyle, of bias. However, the Superior Court of Pennsylvania has. They specifically wrote an opinion saying something that all the lawyers here will recognize is never said, which is that that particular judge had shown animus towards the district attorney's office. Please check. You will find out. Check the name of the judge and check that opinion. It says what it says, whatever I might think. And that is on appeal. And let's just say I'm expecting the right outcome on appeal with that. So the rest of your question, I'm sorry.
Are there practices and policies in
yes.
place in your office to make sure that, as you seek to overturn wrongful convictions, that your DAs are not being overly aggressive and are not falsely accusing of past district attorneys?
Thank you for that question. We've actually done some really interesting things, and I got to give credit to the people in my office who did it. I said yes, but they had great ideas. One of the things is we have arguably the most interesting database that is full of information on that portion of police officers who have done things that the defense needs to know, okay? Some of them have done some pretty serious stuff that got them federally indicted for corruption. Some of them have done much less serious stuff, let's say DUI while they were on vacation somewhere, right? But nevertheless, the Constitution says, and the Pennsylvania courts have agreed, that we have to turn this stuff over, even though it really was not turned over in prior administrations. And so we put together a database that will block a prosecutor from subpoenaing one of those officers without supervisory approval. It's literally impossible to subpoena that officer without supervisory approval. Number two, it automatically connects the data and the information that the defense should get to the file. So there's no whoops, oops, I forgot to get this information and turn it over. With our electronic discovery system, it automatically goes to the file. And just to give you another example, I had a Brady czar. Brady is the U.S. Supreme Court case that says the defense has to get stuff that helps them, right? We brought in a Brady czar whose purpose was to audit the entire office to see whether they were complying with our very strict requirement that the defense always gets what they need, and to go around the office and see what we could correct. I wish every office would do that. I think we would have a much better and less broken justice system if every office would do that, but we are actually very proud of it. I think, however, the biggest innovation of all, the biggest of all, is that we knew that if you give the defense everything the Constitution says that they should get, it's going to be harder to win. Ask the New England Patriots. You can ask the Houston Astros. They were pretty good at winning by cheating. Well, we would like to win the right way, meaning with the evidence, with the defense having all of their rights. And so the biggest thing that we have done is to go all over the country to hire the most talented people we can possibly get. Because you do have to be a more talented attorney than some of the ones I was up against in 30 years of being in court 4 to 5 days a week. If the only way they can win is by cheating, then we need to hire people who can win after they turn over the information. And that has made a tremendous difference.
All right, if you are just tuning in, this is WHYY's Democratic Primary Forum for Philadelphia District Attorney. I'm Cherry Gregg, co-host of Studio 2. I'm alongside WHYY political reporter Carmen Russell-Sluchansky. This forum was originally planned as a conversation between both Democratic candidates for district attorney, incumbent Larry Krasner and former municipal court judge Patrick Dugan. Both campaigns were invited and both candidates initially confirmed their participation. But on April 10th, Judge Dugan's campaign informed the organizers that he would no longer be attending. The campaign reiterated that decision in a press release sent earlier today. WHYY and its partners decided to move forward, so tonight's forum is with incumbent Larry Krasner as the sole candidate for district attorney who's taking questions.
All right, so we're going to move into our short lightning round. Quick questions, quick answers. This is going to speed things up a little, so we want you to be brief. 30 seconds brief. Let's begin. Can you do it? This is the test. This is the real test.
I'm not very good at that, but all right. We'll try.
Is plea bargaining overused or a necessary part of the criminal justice system? Or both?
Plea bargaining, when it is not coercive, and that's a key aspect of it, is a necessary part of the criminal justice system. People should have the opportunity to accept responsibility for what they've actually done. They should have that. However, what used to happen, and what I saw as a very active trial lawyer and as a defense attorney, some judges would tell you, okay, this will be 2 years if you plead, but if you try it and you lose, it's going to be 20. In other words, the crime was worth 2, but your exercise of your constitutional trial right was worth 18 because I want to go home early. That is despicable. That's known as a trial tax. We are very much against that. Our policies have strictly reined it in. So I think that's an important caveat.
We're in lightning round, so I'm...
Quick.
Name one diversion program that you would, quote, put on steroids.
You know, I hope my opponent knows that steroids are mostly by prescription only, because otherwise he would be in possession of a controlled substance. Never mind. Name one that I would put on steroids?
Yeah, one that you would expand now, that isn't.
Well, I would like to expand it in a healthier kind of way than steroids, but I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger's not my guy, but what would I do? Well, I will say this. You know, one of the things I do like about Judge Dugan is his Veterans Court, and they, of course, exist all over the country, but the one here is good. It goes on now, despite the fact that he's retired. It goes on now. We persist with that. I've always felt it should be larger, and I would like to expand that. There may be things we can do in that regard. There have been discussions between me and some of the leadership, the current leadership in municipal court, about trying to come up with a court that would be diversionary to deal with the issues of unhoused people.
Okay, you got
We
two,
just
and
won.
so
There
that's
you
good.
go. And the next question is, do you support Philadelphia's sanctuary city policy? And for those of you who do not know what that means, it limits interactions and the sharing of information between the city and federal immigration authorities. Do you support it, yes or no? And if so, what does support for that policy look like coming from your office in a third term?
So yes, although the activists in this area use different language. And what that support looks like is everybody remembering there's the 10th Amendment and a commandeering doctrine that says the Fed can't make us do what they want just because they want it.
And if reelected, what would be the biggest challenge in your mind for the DA's office in the next 4 years?
Wow. All right. Well, look, one of my hopes is that Philadelphia could actually go from being the chronically violent city that it is reputed to be and actually has been, to being a city that is consistently safe. We have seen 4 consecutive, oh, this is lightning round. Okay, that's it.
15 seconds. 10 now.
10 more? We can do it, I'm sure.
Okay, moving on then. What do you tell victims who feel that you did not sufficiently aggressively prosecute a perpetrator who harmed them?
Well, look, here's the truth. We started out with 29 victim advocates. When I came in there, we grew it to 58. And then we also added the CARES program, which deals specifically with families of homicide victims. We provide a lot of support. We are right now spending a lot of time trying to increase the funding for the outside victims organizations who have not had an increase in their money for over 15 years, right? We care deeply about these issues, but we also recognize that there may be some survivors, some victims, who disagree with our approach. What we say is, we want your voice, we want to know what you have to say, we want to hear from you, we want to know everything we don't know, but the reality is ultimately it is up to us to figure out whether the entire Commonwealth, all the citizens of, or residents of Philadelphia are well served by a particular victim's or a particular survivor's wishes in a case.
What prosecutorial decision have you made in the last 8 years that you regret the most?
You know, the hard part is I probably mess up every day. I mean, seriously. It's, you know, if you think about the number of cases we have, we manage 50,000 cases a year, 30 to 35,000 new cases. That's 100 new cases every single day. So it is impossible that we're not going to make literally, probably over the course of 8 years, millions of decisions and make a lot of bad ones. I mean, frankly, if you look at what happens in emergency rooms, and we are kind of an emergency room, mistakes get made there as well. So I don't know that I could hone in on one, other than to say I think we all have the humility to know that we screw up, regularly, that it's unavoidable, but the most important thing is to try to be fair and try to get it right, and, you know, hope that we muddle through that way.
All right, and that is it for our lightning round. And we have a few more questions before we end the forum. I want to move on to ADA training and recruitment. One of the most critical functions of the district attorney is building and retaining a team of qualified, ethical, and community-minded prosecutors. You guys are a big law firm in many ways. So DA Krasner, your office staff has seen significant turnover over the years, over your terms. Reports had highlighted challenges with attorney retention, heavy caseload, and a shrinking pool of experienced trial lawyers, even as Philadelphia faced complex gun violence and public safety issues. How do you explain the struggle to retain and recruit top legal talent, and what specifically have you done in the past, and what would you do in a third term to improve the DA's office ability to attract and keep skilled attorneys?
So the good news is that narrative is false. During the pandemic period, when we were seeing massive attrition throughout law, the attrition rate, according to the legal intelligencer for big law, was 50%. Our attrition rate was 40%. Let's understand, a lot of those talented people coming out of law school are making $200,000 in their first year, and I'm paying $70,000. But our attrition rate is lower, okay? And yes, we went all over the country to a whole lot of top 50 schools where there was plenty of opportunity, and because of their idealism, a lot of these people they either came from, studied elsewhere and came back, or they came to Philadelphia. Simply put, attrition is relatively high in all public defenders and all DA's offices around the country because for a lot of people it's not their last stop. But on the numbers, our attrition rate is not extraordinary, it is not bad, and the truth is that the quality of our attorneys is way up. We had a big challenge when we came in, which was what they call the donut hole, meaning there's a 3-year commitment, but there weren't many attorneys between years 3 and 10. We have filled that donut hole. Contrary to this, how shall I put it, weaponized claim that we have bad attrition. The fact is our attrition is actually normal to slightly low compared to our predecessors, and we're very happy with that.
So talk about what you're doing to make sure your new ADAs in your office are properly trained and capable of serving as prosecutors in this city.
Sure. Once again, you know, a lot of this criticism comes from Judge Dugan, who, for those of you who don't know, to the best of our knowledge, never tried a felony case. Not as a judge, not as a lawyer on either side, okay? He is a misdemeanor judge, and the only thing he does with felony cases is preliminary hearing. So I'm not sure where he gets his expertise, claiming that we don't train well. But the fact is our training starts earlier than it did in prior administrations. It goes longer. We have our people come in right after Labor Day, and they are trained all the way through passing the bar, which is mid-October, and then the training continues over the next 3 years. It is a much more intensive training program than existed previously, and we are seeing results. You know, it does take lawyers a while to get their bearing, but we are seeing results that have put us in this place. The person who's now our chief of major trials was hired by us. She's been in the office for 6-7 years. She's a graduate of Central, I believe, who I hired from Howard, because I thought it was okay to leave the city of Philadelphia to hire some people, a viewpoint my opponent, who is not here, does not share, okay? We have brought in amazing people, and some of them are going to leave an indelible mark that is very, very positive on this office and on this city, and it is in part a consequence of their excellent training.
I'd like to talk about cash bail for a moment. It's become one of the most divisive issues in criminal justice reform. For those who don't know, it refers to the practice of requiring a defendant to pay a certain amount of money to the court as collateral to secure their release from jail and appearance at trial. Your office stopped requesting bail for certain nonviolent offenses while asking for bail for nearly $1 million for other serious charges. This appears to be a strategy to effectively eliminate cash bail here in Philadelphia. However, critics say that you're taking away a tool the courts have in order to ensure appearance at court. Now, while you may disagree with cash bail, it is actually still the law, and critics on both sides have raised concerns about your approach. Why do you think your approach is effective?
Well, our approach is effective in that if you look at the population of people who are incarcerated, there are fewer broke people who are in there for nonviolent minor offenses than there were before. And if you look at the other end, if you look at people who are charged with really serious violent crimes, the bails are higher. They should be. If I had a magic wand, I would eliminate cash bail, which DC did 30 plus years ago. New Jersey, Kentucky, Illinois are doing. It is the modern trend. Money should have nothing to do with whether or not a person is detained. About 12% of people in DC are detained before their trial because they pose a danger to the public. About 88% are released without having to pay any money. They have some services, which is a good idea, but they're released without that. It works. It's a good system. Money never should have had anything to do with this. But I have to follow the law, and the law in Pennsylvania, which our Republican legislators are not liable to change anytime soon, is that we have to use cash bail. So what we have done is effectively simulate a no cash bail system by either saying we don't want any money, or if we think someone is a danger to society and unlikely to show up in court, then we want a very high bail. And what that has done is exactly what I said. It has moved us in the right direction where we have fewer unhoused people who are mentally ill sitting forever at taxpayers' expense in custody, but we also don't have rich, dangerous people getting out just because they're rich.
All right, we're going to move on and talk about prison conditions and public safety. Philadelphia's jails have faced ongoing crises post-COVID, including understaffing and inmate deaths. At the same time, there's been an effort to reduce the jail population to avoid overcrowding and to improve conditions. DA Krasner, your office has supported efforts to reduce the jail population specifically for nonviolent offenders, but some critics say these policies don't account for rising concerns about safety in neighborhoods already impacted by violence. Have your policies contributed to the crisis within Philly prisons, or have they mitigated it?
Our policies have massively mitigated the situation in Philly prisons. The number of people in custody in the county right now, according to my conversation earlier today with Dave Rudofsky, who is involved in the lawsuit to improve prison conditions, he told me we're at about 3,600 people, okay? It was 6,500 when I came into office. It was nearly 10,000 under Lynn Abraham. Can you imagine what a fiasco the prisons would be if we were doing the Lynn Abraham thing and we were stacking and racking human beings unnecessarily for no good reason? You would have Attica on your hands. It would be a complete disaster. I am delighted to hear Dave Rudofsky, who's been around for a minute, tell me he thinks it's the lowest county prison population he's ever seen. I'm also delighted at the fact that we have the lowest number of homicides in over 50 years. And I can tell you that the state prison population during our term has gone from 13,000 down to 9,000. This notion that if you lock up more people, you're going to be safe is crap. It has always been crap. The countries that do this right, the cities that do this right, the states that do this right, invest deeply in prevention, and they enjoy crime going down while incarceration goes down at the same time. I could point you, for example, to Germany, where they have 11% our rate of incarceration, and they only have 11% our rate of homicides. It is something the right in the United States has sold us for a long time because they don't like our freedoms at all. They would love to see as many people locked up as possible while they wave a flag and holler land of the free. Well, it ain't the land of the free if you're the most incarcerated country in the world and you simultaneously manage to be hyper-violent, which we actually are. What I'm talking about here is called success. It's called victory. It's called more fairness, more freedom, and more safety all at the same time, simply by putting our resources where they should be and getting the results that we should all want.
And so I want you to, quick follow-up, how do you weigh the need to protect the rights and safety of incarcerated individuals against the public's concern about accountability and repeat offenses? And I want you to get specific about what methods you use to make sure, what tools you have, I guess, to make sure that we keep people safe, but we also keep the conditions in the Philly jails livable, humane?
Well, thank you for the question. This is a real challenge because I have really almost no control over what happens in the jails. I mean, sure, I know and speak to Mike Resnick. We do have a couple of lawyers who specialize in the prosecution of assaults by inmates against guards, illegal smuggling of phones and drugs into the prison by guards. We are involved in that, and I have been in many rooms, including today, talking about how we can make conditions better, but it's just not my lane. I don't have control over that. That's something that belongs to the city. I don't want to see people in jail who shouldn't be there. It is definitely not good for society, but I think sometimes we just lose track. We have been so indoctrinated in the idea that it's about punishment, and that if you punish, you're going to be safer, that we completely lost track of the fact that that doesn't work. What actually works is a deep investment in prevention and modern enforcement, which involves the use of, here it comes again, science. It involves the use of forensics to solve cases that we didn't used to solve. Because when you solve cases, people are deterred from committing them. They're not actually deterred by getting 25 years instead of 15. They are deterred by the likelihood that they will be caught. That has been part of our success. And I have to say, I recruit all over the country. I often say to people, students who are there saying, how can you send anybody to jail? Jails are not perfect. I often say to them, you're right, they're not perfect. I have visited a prison overseas that was a magnificent example of how you rehabilitate people where they have far less recidivism. I wish our prisons were like that. That's for you. That is for you. I don't cover that lane, but we need you to move forward and cover that lane and to completely reform how our prisons and jails work, because my goodness, how effective we would be if that modified too.
And we're wrapping up. Go right ahead.
I think this is our last question. And I just want to point out, I want to preface this by saying I don't think you once thanked me for a question, just to mention that. This probably won't be the one. D.A. Krasner, some political leaders and publications have called you divisive and polarizing, not my words, including your challenger, Judge Patrick Dugan, who gave it as a primary reason for challenging you. Meanwhile, the local Democratic Party did not endorse you in this race, and several major local unions endorsed your challenger, Judge Dugan, or simply did not endorse at all. Yet it appears your strategy has also been to make this race about Donald Trump, despite the fact that Judge Dugan is a Democrat and there's no Republican running, rather than focusing on the issues relevant to the DA's office. Have you burned too many bridges to serve another term effectively, and what will you do to repair those relationships if you are reelected?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for all those questions. In fact, thank you. That's 4 thank yous for your 4 questions. People who actually try to change things are frequently referred to as troublemakers. They are frequently told that they do not get along. What is wrong with you? You're not getting along. All right, be quiet or I'll lock you up. Anyway, so
How would you repair those relationships?
I'm trying not to be divisive here. So at any rate, here's the reality. I represented activist groups and activists, including 1 or 2 who are in this room right now, for many, many years. And part of that representation involves studying movements and studying their arc and their trajectory. And I came to a couple conclusions, one of which was that it often took them 30 years to get to a particular level of success before they had their next zigzag and their next battle. Another one was, it's a bit of a cliche, but it was a slogan, which is that first they ignore you, and then they laugh at you, and then they fight with you, and then you win. Yeah, we're in a fight. That's kind of what happens. When you start to demonstrate to a country that is intoxicated on incarceration rather than rehabilitation, when you start to show people whose livelihood is made on putting as many Philadelphians in their upstate prisons as they can, that it's not effective criminal justice, then they do what they do. They impeach you. They say that you're terrible for public safety, even though the actual numbers show that we are potentially setting a record in the city of Philadelphia this year, an unbelievable record given that we remain poor and there are more guns on the street every single day. They're going to say what they're going to say. You know, I am in no way comparing myself to my hero, Dr. King, but, you know, that man wore a suit to bed and he was arrested 20 times, okay? This is what happens when you actually try to change things. People are going to come at you. Or as my mom used to say, here it comes. I got to remember it. You know you're doing something right when you angry up the devil. Well, hopefully I'll keep angrying up the devil.
Quick follow-up, if I may. I'm looking at a headline right now from the Marshall Project, which asks in the headline, "Is the age of progressive prosecutors over?" and has a picture of Kim Foxx of Chicago. This was published right after the elections just this last year, where some progressive DAs lost their races. So let me ask you, is the age of progressive prosecutors over?
So the answer is no. Kim Foxx was not defeated in an election. She chose not to run again. She won her last re-election after being outspent 5-1 by the son of a billionaire who was her opponent, and I presume actually showed up for a debate. She won that election by 30 points, okay? You will, in my opinion, and I know Kim well, you're going to see her again. Sorry, Kim, when she runs for governor or runs for U.S. Senate and wins. That's what's going to happen. In the same way, Wesley Bell, who was the progressive or reform prosecutor in St. Louis County, just made it to the United States House. That's what you're going to see. No, I don't think it's over at all. We are seeing prison populations around the country in decline. We are seeing a whole lot of people getting reelected, and it is my opinion that people are going to start to understand pretty soon the power that local prosecutors have to keep the Trump administration in check. It's a very, very important thing. Most people don't understand that Trump cannot pardon a state court conviction, including his own, but he cannot. And most people don't understand that the 10th Amendment says we prosecutors, just like police or the mayor, do not have to do what Donald Trump says just because he says it. It's the commandeering doctrine. It's in the 10th Amendment. So we are actually one of the last walls, one of the last defenses against a, how shall I put it, a fool who would be king in his efforts to make everybody comply in advance and without legal authority. And I think what you're going to see is that actually there are more and more reformed prosecutors moving forward as people come to understand that now there's a new job, which is not just to be the DA, it's also to be a democracy advocate and to save this country from what Donald Trump would like to see coming.
And now it's time for a closing statement, and you have 3 minutes to answer this. If reelected as Philadelphia District Attorney, what is your vision for the next 4 years for the Philadelphia DA's office?
Well, first, I'd like to thank you both for all of your questions. I think it's very important that we are grateful for the opportunity to be here. And long may the flag of public radio, public television, and the Bar Association wave, despite the knuckleheads trying to tear it down. What is my vision? Well, one of those visions is that those flags will still be waving when it is my time to get out of here and find a beach chair. I think that that is important. So saving democracy would be on my list. Another one would be to deal with the reality that there's going to be an absolute vacuum of accountability for the kinds of things that rational federal prosecutors used to pursue. You're not going to see pollution prosecution like there used to be. You're not going to see white-collar crime prosecution because the president is a white-collar criminal, and he is surrounded by other white-collar criminals. You're not going to see that. Somebody is going to have to pick this up. And if there's anybody with a whole bunch of grant money out there, please let me know, because I will hire a whole team of Department of Justice lawyers who are running up Route 95 from DC, and we'll put them in our office and we'll do that. Beyond that, you know, we have done a lot in collaboration with other people. I am in no way saying that this is somehow something I did myself, but we have done a lot in collaboration with others to make this a safer city. We have done a lot to make it a city where people now have some faith that prosecutors are not just out to get them. We have done a lot to reduce prison populations to places where they have not been literally for decades. We've done a lot to do that. And there's nothing I would rather see than to continue with the same values, to try to make the city safer and fairer and freer, and to have the city go from being a place that is considered chronically violent to a place that is considered to be consistently safe. I would consider that a worthy achievement if it's something that we collectively, and that of course includes a whole lot of people who are outside of government, all the outsiders I identify with. So those are, those are coaches, those are teachers, those are mentors, those are clergy, those are aunties, as they say, or unks in the block who are making sure that the kids are okay. It's them, but it's also, it's some of our council people who push so hard for a lot of prevention money. It's the wise investment through the budget, including by the mayor, in the places where it should go that has made such a difference. So it is my sincere hope that we could take this fabulous city and that we could continue to move it in the right direction, even if that shatters some people's mad affection for a cult of punishment, as if that's an answer when we know scientifically that it's not. It's okay if they change how they think. It's okay if I change how I think, but I'm going to keep sticking to the data, and the data says what it says.
All right, well, thank you. This brings us to the end of tonight's forum with Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner. Thank you, DA Krasner, for joining us and engaging with these important questions about leadership, accountability, and the future of justice in our city. We appreciate you being here.
And thank you both for your questions.
And as we noted earlier, this event was originally intended to include both Democratic primary candidates. While Judge Patrick Dugan declined to participate, we extended an open invitation through this evening because we believe voters deserve to hear from everyone seeking this office.
So as you probably gathered from some of this Q&A, Philadelphia is at a critical crossroads when it comes to public safety and fairness in the justice system. And the role of the district attorney, perhaps more than any other local official, directly impacts how justice is defined and delivered in our communities. So I want to take this moment to remind you that the primary election is Tuesday, May 20th. You should make a plan to vote now. If you'd like more coverage on this race and other key contests, you can visit WHYY.org.
And thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us. And as always, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay safe. And now we'd like to turn the floor over to our partner for tonight's discussion, Committee of 70. Lauren Cristella, come on to the podium.
I will keep it very brief. I know everyone's itching to get out here. Thank you so much. I'm Lauren Cristella, President and CEO of the Committee of 70. I'm a board member of the Forum of Executive Women, a board member of the League of Women Voters of Philadelphia, a member of the Judicial Commission for the Bar Association, and a proud 2-decade sustaining member of WHYY. Big fan of all of these organizations. And I want to thank District Attorney Krasner for honoring his word and respecting our partners here tonight by showing up and engaging in this forum. We're deeply grateful for that. Thank you. I do want to remind people, yes, May 20th, but Pennsylvania is a closed primary state. So that means you have to pick a team. If you want to vote in this race, you have to pick Democrat, right? Closed primaries mean you have to pick a party by May 5th. That's actually your deadline. If you don't think that's fair, join the open primary movement. Check out 70.org for that. We also have our ballot guide. You can get information on all the judicial candidates, all of the candidates on the ballot at 70.org. And if we want better than 22% turnout in this upcoming election, we all have to get our friends and neighbors registered before that May 5th date and to know to show up on Election Day, May 20th. Thank you so much to our friends at WHYY for their phenomenal hosting. I moderated one of these. It's a pleasure to watch actual pros. So thank you so much for that, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Oh, well done.